I'm Dr. Arnold Washington. The name of my practice is Recovery Options, and we're located both in New York City and Manhattan and in Princeton, New Jersey. There are different categories of drinkers. There are people who drink responsibly, moderately, within limits, and do not develop problems related to their drinking, use alcohol appropriately, which is use the substance for its pleasures, to enhance an experience, for some people to relax a bit after a hard day of work, but not use the substance as a way to cope, and not use it at a level that causes reverberations through a person's life or puts them in a position of suffering serious consequences. Problem drinkers, on the other hand, are people who drink to the point where it causes some kind of problem in their life, but typically their drinking is not off the scale. It's not causing serious medical or other kinds of problems in their life, but something bad is happening related to their drinking that gets their attention, certainly gets the attention of people around them. So at least according to the National Institute on Alcoholism and Alcohol Abuse here in the US, the NIAAA, they define the upper limit of what is considered to be moderate or low risk drinking to be for healthy adults, and that's an important qualification. People who don't have any medical or psychiatric or psychological problems that would only be made worse by alcohol, even in moderation. But for otherwise healthy adults, for an adult man, the upper limits of what they consider to be low risk or moderate drinking is no more than 3 or 4 drinks on any one occasion during any one drinking episode, and total weekly alcohol consumption that does not exceed 14 drinks a week. For a female, for a woman, an adult, otherwise healthy woman, the number is about half of that. The reason is because women metabolize alcohol differently than men. Their bodies have lower water content. Obviously, they are on average a lower body weight, and so a smaller amount of alcohol is going to have a larger effect on them. So for a woman, it's no more than 2 to 3 drinks on any one occasion, and outer limit of maybe 7 to 9 drinks per week. But it's important to add that moderate drinking is not just defined by the absolute amount of alcohol a person consumes, but it's also determined by how the alcohol affects a person. Because some people are affected more profoundly by alcohol than others, and will start to experience consequences at lower levels of alcohol consumption than other people do. Also important to define what a drink is, because when I hear somebody say that they freely pour the vodka in the glass and then add some ice cubes and maybe some orange juice, and that's a drink, we really have to ask, how much alcohol is actually in that glass. So what's known scientifically as a drink unit is either a glass of wine, a bottle or can of beer, or a shot glass, about 1.5 ounces of distilled spirits, liquor, all contain the same amount of alcohol. And the brain responds only to the concentration of ethyl alcohol that gets put in the brain. The brain doesn't really care what flavor the alcohol was, what form it was when it went into the stomach. It's just the amount of the actual drug that gets to the brain. So when people say, I only drink beer or I only drink wine, the real issue is what's the total consumption of ethyl alcohol per drinking episode and per week. So those numbers I mentioned before are limits that are based on standard drink units. In terms of how it affects somebody, the problem drinker, now that we're talking about problem drinkers as compared to people who are abusing alcohol, and then compared to those who are dependent on alcohol, also known as alcoholics. The problem drinker their life is not being disrupted by their drinking, but there are problems. Nothing life damaging. These are not people who have totally lost control over their alcohol consumption, are perhaps a bit outside the limits I just described. Alcohol abuse is the next step up, where somebody is pretty regularly suffering some significant consequences from their drinking. but it's not occurring with great regularity. They have not yet encountered consequences that may be truly life-damaging, and they haven't completely lost control over their ability to regulate their alcohol consumption. The next level up is the person who's alcohol dependent, or the alcoholic. A common misconception is two things. Most people think that to be alcoholic, you have to be a daily drinker and you have to be physically dependent on alcohol. Neither is true. In fact, most people who qualify for a diagnosis of alcohol dependence or alcoholism are not physically dependent on alcohol to the point where they experience any withdrawal symptoms. And binge drinking is more common than daily drinking among alcoholics. People who will drink intensively, like on a weekend, pretty regularly, and then may go for several days in between binges without drinking at all. Alcohol dependence is defined mostly by how the person's alcohol consumption is affecting their life, and the nature of their involvement with alcohol. So the alcohol-dependent person basically lacks an off switch. Once the drinking starts, they lose predictability as to when it's going to stop. The second thing is that their life comes to revolve increasingly around drinking. Likely to develop some obsession with alcohol and have it be a very standard feature of their life. And thirdly, and perhaps this is the most telling aspect of alcohol dependence, is that the person continues to drink and may even escalate their drinking despite increasingly severe and life-damaging consequences. So the alcoholic is the person who experiences a severe consequence related to drinking. Could be a DWI, car accident, loss of a job, dissolution of a marriage, and if anything, will drink more on the heels of that rather than stop. So it's the loss of control, not having the off switch, it's the preoccupation or obsession with alcohol, and the continued, even escalating drinking despite adverse consequences. Alcohol is a priority in this person's life, despite the fact that it may be ruining their lives. So those are the different categories. People who are problem drinkers, when it comes to the idea of moderating rather than stopping drinking, the problem drinkers are the best candidates for that, because these are people who have already been experiencing some problems related to their drinking but have not lost control, and are probably the best candidates for succeeding at moderation. And studies would show, they do show, that among those people who become problem drinkers, the best candidates for moderation, to succeed at moderation, which means bringing the drinking back within the limits that were described before and being able to do so consistently, are people who have no history of ever being physically dependent on alcohol or having serious, severe alcohol problems. People have no history of addiction to other drugs. People who are not suffering from a medical or psychiatric condition that would only be made worse by drinking even moderately. People who have been experiencing problems related to their drinking for less than 10 years. And people who have little or no history of significant alcohol or drug problems. They appear to be the best candidates for moderation. That doesn't mean anyone who doesn't meet those criteria they're doomed to fail, but it means that if you look at the profile of those who succeeded, that's pretty much what you see.